All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving our praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I'd like to give divine honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from, and I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. And today is Monday, December 12th, Slakia, not December 12th, December 15th, 2025, Missile Monday, and I have this article from NDTV. Slakia. And it says 60 years ago, the CIA lost a nuclear device in the Himalayas. It's still there. So I'm just going to go into this article and bring out a few scriptures. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying and straight to the point. And it says in 1965, American and Indian climbers secretly hauled a plutonium-powered generator to the Himalayas. It says, at the height of the Cold War in 1965, China had just tested an atomic bomb. The CIA wanted to spy on Chinese missile tests using a nuclear power antenna placed high on Nanda Devi, overlooking the country's border. American and Indian climbers prepared their cargo, an antenna, cables, and a 13-kilogram generator called the Snap 19C. Inside it was plutonium. As the climbers ready for the final push, a blizzard swept in, swallowing the mountain, the New York Times reported. From the advanced base camp below, Captain M.S. Kohli, the Indian officer leading the mission, watched in fear. He grabbed the radio and instructed, Camp 4, this is advanced base. Can you hear me? Come back quickly. Don't waste a single minute. Secure the equipment. Don't bring it down. The climbers hid the equipment on an icy ledge near Camp 4 and fled downhill to save their lives. They left behind a nuclear device containing nearly a third of the plutonium used in the Nagasaki bomb. And as you can see, it's a picture of it. It says, it has never been seen again. The United States never acknowledged the mission. Officially, nothing had happened. The idea for the mission formed at a cocktail party. General Curtis LeMay, head of the U.S. Air Force, was speaking with Barry Bishop, a National Geographic photographer and Everest climber. Bishop described how Himalayan peaks offer clear views deep into Tibet and China. Soon after, the CIA asked Bishop to organize a covert expedition disguised as a scientific research. He would recruit climbers, create a cover story, and keep the mission secret. Bishop agreed. He set up the fake Sikkim scientific expedition and brought in Jim McCarthy, a young American climber and lawyer who was paid $1,000 a month for what the agency called a vital national security task. India joined quietly, driven by fears of China after the 1962 war. Captain M.S. Kohli, the Indian mountaineer leading the effort, was unconvinced. It was nonsense, he said later. When the agency first suggested placing the device on Kanchenjunga, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, says the world's third highest peak, Kohli said, I told them whoever is advising the CIA is a stupid man. McCarthy agreed. I looked at the It's like I looked at that Kanchenjunga plan and said, "Are you out of your mind?" Eventually, they settled on Nanda Devi. The climb began in September 1965. The climbers were rushed by helicopter to high altitude without proper acclimatization. Acclimatization. Many fell sick, but the plutonium brought warmth. The radioactive fuel gave off heat. Sherpas fought over who got to carry it. Coley said. At the time, he said, we had no idea about the danger. Then on October 16th, near the summit, the blizzard hit. We were 99% dead, said Sonam Wangyal, one of the Indian climbers. We had empty stomachs, no food, no water, no food, and we were totally exhausted. When Coley ordered the equipment abandoned, McCarthy exploded. You have to bring that generator down. You're making a huge mistake, he said. But the decision held. The next year, the team returned to recover the device. It was gone. The entire ledge, ice, rock equipment had been ripped away by an avalanche. Oh my God, this will be very, very serious. Coley remembered the CIA officers saying, "These are plutonium capsules." Search missions followed, radiation detectors, infrared sensors, nothing. That damn thing was very warm, McCarthy said. It would melt the ice around it and keep sinking. The mission was a failure. The secret remained buried until 1978. A young reporter named Howard Kahn uncovered the story and published it in Outside magazine. The scandal exploded. Protesters in India waved signs that read, CIA is poisoning our waters. Behind closed doors, governments moved quickly to quiet the storm. President Jimmy Carter and former Prime Minister Morarji Desai worked together in secret. In a private letter, Carter praised Desai for how he handled the Himalayan device problem, calling it an unfortunate matter. Both countries said little. Today, the men who carried it up the mountain are still old or gone. Jim McCarthy, now in his 90s, still trembles with anger. You can't leave plutonium by a glacier feeding into the Ganges, he shouted. Do you know how many people depend on the Ganges? Captain Coley, before his death, looked back with regret. I would not have done the mission in the same way, he said. The CIA kept us out of the picture, he said. Their plan was foolish. Their actions were foolish. Whoever advised them was foolish. And we were caught in that. The whole thing, he said quietly, is a sad chapter in my life. So yeah, man, it's like so as you can see, 60 years ago, they lost, a plutonium generator in the Himalayan mountains, and even though this isn't a missile, it still has something to do with it because they said, plutonium, which was used in one of the bombs or the bomb that was dropped on, Nagasaki, you know, and plutonium reactor. But this just goes to show you that this is just one of many incidences where the United States has had, a broken arrow, which let's get that, which I brought this up before, but let's just get it. It's the definition for a broken arrow. It says in U.S. military jargon, broken arrow primarily refers to an accidental, it's like an accident involving a nuclear weapon, lost, stolen, detonated, etc., that doesn't risk nuclear war. But it also historically served as a code phrase for ground troops in extreme danger of being overrun, requesting immediate air support, as popularized in movies like We Were Soldiers. So it has two main distinct meanings: a serious nuclear incident or a desperate call for help. And in this case, 60 years ago, this is a serious nuclear incident because they lost a plutonium generator and couldn't find it, to save their lives. And this isn't the only incident. They've also had, incidences where they've either dropped, nukes or completely lost them, just like Russia last month, they had a broken arrow incident where they were testing the Satan II, and it went to launch, it got a little ways up in the air, and then came right back down and detonated, so that would be an example of a broken arrow situation. But, the CIA was behind it, man, and it said it was kept secret, for what? They said it was uncovered in 1972. So they kept this thing secret since, it's like, see, if this was 1965 and this, information came out in 1972, so that means they kept it secret for 7 years, man, and they were never going to tell anyone. But this just goes to show you that, Esau, Edom, your shame is being exposed, man. All right, and then I'm just going to grab, a couple of scriptures, and that'll be it. I'm going to make this too long. But this is the book of Isaiah, chapter 54 and verse 16, and it says, "Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work. And I have created the waster to destroy." And right, the modern day smiths would be, these scientists and physicists that are behind creating and developing these nuclear weapons. A primary example of this would be, Julius Robert Oppenheimer, who was deemed, the father of the atomic bomb, because he was behind, or part of, the Manhattan Project. He was behind, the bombs that were dropped on, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, so he would be a modern day smith, because what does a blacksmith do? They create weapons, and not just, excuse me, not just any weapons, weapons of war. And in this case, these scientists aren't just creating any old weapons of war. They're creating weapons of mass destruction, because these nuclear missiles that are on the earth today, they have the capability of destroying the planet Earth. But the entire planet Earth won't be destroyed, just only certain lands as far as we know now. America, aka Babylon the Great, will be completely destroyed. The land of Israel will be destroyed, but it will be built back up. And me speaking as a man, I believe, a couple of other countries, may get hit too, but if they do, then, they'll be built back up. But America, once these nukes get launched, is going to be completely destroyed and left desolate, So, staying in Isaiah, let's get Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 5, and it says, "For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise, and garments rolled in blood. But this shall be with burning and fuel of fire." And right, this coming world war isn't going to be how traditional warfare was fought, where you had, men on one side of the battlefield, up against, men on the other side of the battlefield, all wielding, different weapons of war, swords, spears, shields, bow and arrows, things of that sort, charging each other in the center of the battlefield, man. That confused noise, swords hitting other swords, swords hitting shields, men letting out that battle cry, men, screaming from getting cut, by a sword or hit with an arrow, that confused noise, man. But what it said, this shall be with burning and fuel of fire, meaning this coming world war is going to be fought with nuclear technology, these missiles that are on the earth today, and as I always make mention, you will have ground troops that are going to be going to war with each other, but this war is primarily going to be fought with nuclear missiles, So I'm going to get the book of Joel, chapter 2. Now start at verse 1. It says, "Blow ye the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord cometh, for it is nigh at hand. A day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains. A great people and a strong, there hath not been ever the like, neither shall there be any more after, even to the years of many generations." And right, this World War III, aka the day of the Lord, is vastly approaching, and just like it says, it's going to be a day of darkness, of gloominess, because again, man, these nukes are going to cover the sky, and it's literally going to be dark in that day, man, and that's what it's describing, these missiles in particular, the warheads covering the sky, because there's going to be so many of them, making their way to Babylon, right? And also, all of these nukes that are on the earth today are going to be used, none of them are going to be spared, kept in museums. No, these nukes are they're serving two purposes, as it stands. One, to destroy Babylon, and two, to, help cleanse and replenish the earth, because right now the earth is polluted, under Esau, Edom's rulership. So these nukes are going to help, cleanse the earth as well. So this is verse 3. It says, "A fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Yea, nothing shall escape them." And right, man, it says the fire devoureth before them, talking about the warheads, because once they're launched, they're going to be traveling extremely fast. They're going to be launched into space, get their specific coordinates, their specific trajectory, and they're going to make their way back down to the earth, and they're going to be traveling extremely fast. So they're going to be on fire. That's that fire that devoureth before them, and it says, "And behind them a flame burneth," going into that jettison pack, that rocket propulsion system that is going to be guiding these missiles to their, target, right? And when it says the land is as the Garden of Eden, it's talking about America, because you still have parts, of this land where the landscape is beautiful, but what it says, behind them a desolate wilderness. So once these nukes hit, and detonate, is gonna decimate this place, So you have parts of the U.S. where it's still beautiful, but, it's all gonna, end once this place gets hit, you know. And just like it says, nothing shall escape them. And now, unless you're a part of the elect, of the nation of Israel, you're a part of the 144,000 or the 1/3 men, women, and children that are going to be saved, you aren't going to escape, man. It doesn't matter what you do. Even if you have a bunker here in America, you're still going to be destroyed. If it's outside of America, you may just be fine. But, if you have a bunker in this land, it's not going to save you. So, continuing, it says, verse 4, the appearance of them is as the appearance of horses, and as horsemen, so shall they run. Like the noise of chariots on the tops of mountains, shall they leap. Like the noise of a flame of fire that devoureth the stubble. As a strong people set in battle array, and yeah, you're going to hear these missiles because they're going to make a great noise. You're going to hear the rocket, that jettison pack, guide these missiles to their target. Verse 6. It says, before their face the people shall be much pain. All faces shall gather blackness, because these people are going to see their death coming, and they're not going to be able to do anything about it. We just pray that we're on the right side of the Lord, and that we're, count worthy to escape this coming destruction. Verse 7, it says, they shall run like mighty men. They shall climb the wall like men of war. They shall march everyone on his ways, and they shall not break their ranks. Neither shall one thrust another. They shall walk every one in his path, and when they fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded. And right, man, this is going into, a broken arrow, because again, the U.S. has their missile defense system. Trump is pretty much trying to do how, Israel has the Golden Dome, not the Golden Dome, the Iron Dome. Number 47, wants to do the Golden Dome, which is a defense system that when, an enemy missile comes toward this place, it'll try to shoot it down, but it's not going to be able to stop it. So that's what this verse is going into, verse 8, in particular, once these nukes are launched, one isn't going to hit another one and knock it out of the air, or, when they shoot, these counter missiles to try to stop them, they're not going to, detonate in midair. No. These nukes are going to be launched. They're going to try to shoot their counter missiles. They're just going to bounce right off of them and keep going. Nothing is going to stop them. And there's not going to be a broken arrow incident during World War III. These nukes are going to hit their target, man. They're going to reach this place, America. Nothing is going to stop them. So I'm just going to get a couple more, and that'll be it. It's the book of Revelation, chapter 9. And verse 12. It says, one woe is past, and behold, there come two woes more hereafter. And, that one woe is talking about World War I, which took place, from 1915 to 1919. And then eventually World War II. So let's get that in the book of Revelation, chapter 11, and verse 14. It says, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. And right, World War I came to pass, and then World War II, which was from 1939 to about 1945, So World War I came to pass, then World War II came to pass. But what? That third woe cometh quickly. And we're upon that third woe, is here. But this war won't be a hot war until, Russia and America are directly, at war with each other. It's still a cold war for now, and then eventually it's going to heat up. know. So I'm going to end it with this. It's the book of Revelation, chapter 9, and verse 15. And it says, "And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the third part of men." And right when you jump back, to Revelation 7, it mentions the four angels, which these are four literal angels holding back the four winds, which the four winds represent, the coming destruction. World War III, if you will, aka the day of the Lord. And it says, just like it says, there's a particular hour, day, month, and year when this war is going to take place. The Heavenly Father has everything, perfectly calculated to happen when He wants it to happen, And this is to slay the third part of men, because you have three classes of men on the earth today. You have the sons of God, which today are known as the biblical Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. The tribe of Judah, all the way down to the tribe of Issachar. You have the sons of men, which are the different heathen nations. And you have the sons of the wicked, which are the nation of Edom, you so-called white people, and that's what this destruction is for. You, the wicked, the third part of men. And you will also have 2/3 of the nation of Israel that are going to get caught up in this destruction, because they refuse to repent and turn back to the Lord while they had, time. And then you different heathen nations that, are able to return to your homeland before this destruction takes place. You're just collateral damage. You're just over here to make a little money and die, But World War III is upon us, man. And just know there's not going to be any broken arrow incidences, So, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, where I learned this truth from. And I like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till next time I say, Shalom.